A special shout out. I help out at the youth center here in Centralia, and yesterday when I was coming out to go get some things, a young lady drove up and I couldn't see exactly who she was. She says, "Where's the chess class beginning?" I said, "Just come right on in and go all the way to the back." And she got out, she started laughing, and I looked at her, my mouth dropped open. It was my niece who had flew in from Denver, Colorado, just for this occasion. Jan, there you go. Today, I hope to awaken you with some thoughts and to channel those thoughts with one simple word. That simple word is if. Repeat that after me, if.
If.
Now, that's a big, big word that a number of us don't think about that much. I hope to challenge you today that every time you hear that word, you would think about something that I have said that would make you think about that word if. If, the most important word in the English language today. I hope that as time goes on, that you will remember that if Dr. King had not been where he was and did the things that he did, we wouldn't be sitting as we are today. On my way in this morning, I passed by the Veterans Memorial out there, and its veterans are honored for their service to our country. I reflect upon their contributions that has enabled us to remain a free, strong nation. A nation of people that has continued to engage in many different encounters that will keep us as we are, strong and free. Then I reflected back on Dr. King and his deathful efforts to bring a togetherness to this nation of all people. Then I was awakened to the fact that in those days, the 1960s, that we celebrate now about Dr. King and his drive for freedom, we also developed another nation of veterans. Those veterans included people that we hear very little about, but who were very instrumental in the drive for freedom. Individuals such as Thurgood Marshall, Dr. Ralph Abernathy, Whitney Young, James Farmer, Roy Wilkins, names that some of us have never heard of, except people like me or old people. So I say that those people was instrumental in doing one thing, letting Dr. King and letting us say one thing that we can say today: free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Yes, a number of people should be honored because they too felt the sting of the German Shepherd dog as he bit into the flesh of the marchers. They felt the brutal baton, billy club that went upside the heads of many of our forefathers. They felt the force of the fireman's hose, and yes, the continued verbal and physical abuse of racial hate, an attempt to destruct and to keep a group of people in the status quo. Yes, Dr. King gave his life, but without those efforts of those veterans, Dr. King's war on society and justice would have been a fruitless effort. Many of you sit here today with only a paper knowledge or a film knowledge, as we just seen, of that time and that era. Many of you do not have the idea of what the segregated system in America was at that time and how it existed in the South. But yet, many of you may not realize it stretched into the far neighborhoods of the North. And those efforts and those tactics of the civil rights war that existed at that time continued for years and years and years. Few of us here remember the train station that had the separate drinking fountains, or the no use of the Centralia, yes, Centralia, swimming pool, or the signs of racial segregation here in Centralia that many of you may not have witnessed or may not know. I can relate to not being able to dine in a simple restaurant after a basketball game simply because my skin was darker. I remember the first person of lighter skin that stood up for a group of black or darker skinned athletes that were denied the nutrition after a basketball game in Salem, Illinois. I can remember going south and seeing the white robes of the Klan in a small Louisiana town of my dad's hometown. Yes, I remember those things, and they will always carry a memory of fight for the rights of a group of people. As we move forward over the decades of time, that includes the death of many, firebombs, the KKK, defiance of state governors, the bloody scenes of death, things that were working to keep and continue the oppression of a group of people. I can't help but wonder if, that's that word again, if Dr. King and those veterans had the opportunity to view today not only the progress, but the regression from the 1960s to today. What would they say? How would they react? What would they do? Would they stand there in awe? Would they sit back like a number of other people and do nothing? I say that our country, our nation, our brothers and sisters of ethnic backgrounds, different religions, and so forth, must realize that if we are to continue to grow as a nation, we must get rid of those segregated ideas and those thoughts of oppression that continue today. The term I use is if. So let's examine that term a little bit. If. The most versatile word in the English language. Why is it that versatile? Well, it means a number of things. It has a meaning of can, will, might happen, might not happen, to be true. It's also a word of doubt, but yet it is a word of realness. If we look at that simple word, if, what if Dr. King had not been in a position or had a mind of challenging the status quo? Where would we be today? I believe that Dr. King understood that word if. And I'll say again, if he or you are going to challenge the things, and especially things of today that you need to be challenging, or if he needed to challenge the things back then, he had to be three things: bold, firm, and strong in many, many ways. We may not be better off today, but if we leave that simple word if alone and leave the actions of history and start focusing on if and actions of today, the here and now. We must keep forward and keep moving forward. We must look forward. We must let nothing, absolutely nothing, and I say it again, nothing, slow us up in any way. We must move on with dignity, honor, and respectability, some of the things that Dr. King fought for. I wonder if dignity and honor that Dr. King, Malcolm X, Dr. Abernathy, and others that paved the way in so many of those sweaty, hot summer days, I wonder what they would say if they could come back today and see what was going on. If they could witness now and view the trends of indignity, of disrespect, self-disrespect, of not only young people, but old people. If they could witness the idea of seeing a young male, not black, but black, white, green, purple, everybody, young kids that walk the streets with a new waistline that begins at the knees. I wonder what they would say about the SAG. Or if they witness or could see the firepower of automatic weapons or firearms that stuffed out the life of a lot of young black men and women. Or, more importantly, or equally as important, the influx of drugs throughout our community. What would they say? I think back over time, and I can remember, if some of you Bible scholars remember, that there was a young man that was assigned to go down, and it was called Moses. And he was told to go down to Egypt's land. And there was an old Negro spiritual that came out about that. And it went something like this. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land, tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Well, let me tell you something. Pharaoh don't have our people anymore. What has our people now are the drugs and the other perimeter forces of destruction that has taken our sons and daughters into the war of society and self-destruction. One of Dr. King's most inspired and powerful works that you hear very little about are the letters from the Birmingham jail. In it, he writes about love. He states that Jesus was an extremist for love. Love for your enemies, love thy neighbor. But he goes on to state that this nation cannot survive half slave and half free. And I add to that, this nation cannot survive with no love. I submit that this nation will not survive out of the arms of our Savior and God, Jesus Christ. And without love, without those two, we will continue to spiral downward. We may not see the signs of color only, or white only, but we see the forces of hate, disrespect, discontent, and racial disharmony every day in many ways. One example of that total disrespect is a simple one man, simply because he is black. He's a black man that won the dream of a lot of young people, or older people, I should say, of my age group. That was the dream, the impossible dream. See, that dream was to see a black man in the Oval Office. That dream came true. But the disrespect of many to honor him as a president continues day after day after day. You don't have to like him. You don't have to dislike him. But one thing I should say is that you should respect him because he is the president of the United States. I remember seeing the newscast not long ago where he came up to a 90-year-old veteran. Yes, that word again, veteran. And the veteran stood up, had a hard time standing up. And President Obama said, "Sir, you don't have to stand up." And he looked at him and he saluted him. He said, "But you are my president." How many of us refuse to welcome him or see him as the president? You don't have to like his position. You don't have to like his ideas or his whatever he wants to do as a president, but we have to respect his office. And that's what we have lost a lot of. The lack of respect for the position held by a person of color is a true indication that this nation still stands divided in many areas of racial togetherness, love, and understanding. If we will, or if we can, look at or within our family of color and send out the call as Dr. King did in his letters from Birmingham. And the letter, one call he had was, "We have a problem down here in Alabama." Well, I'll submit to you today, we have a problem here in the United States. A problem in our country, in our citizens, with our citizens, in our cities, in Chicago, St. Louis. And yes, you may not want to believe it. You may not want to accept it here in Centralia. Statistics show the number of blacks and the deaths of blacks by black men has increased over a period of time. But that's a lack of many things. But I say to you that if blacks are killing blacks, we must get involved and find out why and find a solution to that. But it's not only blacks killing blacks, but look at the increase of the people that are sworn to protect us, how it has increased with the death of black individuals. Dr. King, in his letter, states that law and order exists for the purpose of establishing justice. When that failed to do as it should be done, and it becomes dangerously destructive, and that the dams that block the flow of social progression becomes a struggle into our community, and it destroys our communities. How can we sit idly by with our hands folded and do nothing that would help us eliminate the death and destruction of minds, talent, and most important, life? How can you demand respect when you do not give respect? If you want respect, give respect. Then you can demand respect. But first, respect yourself. I stand here to challenge you, and even you sitting way back there in the back, to those few words I've said, if. What if you, as a young man of color, no matter what color, because we say color, most people think of black, but I say to you that color is all. When I was a young kid, and I won't use the term right now, but I'll remind you, some of you have heard this term, boy. I won't use that term because it's a term of referring back to the age before the civil rights marches. It was a term that was used to keep a black man in his place. And when you were young, even up until an older age, 30s and 40s, and even 50s, you were a boy. Then after you became a boy, until you got to my age, you became, guess what? Uncle. No pun intended, niece. But that's the way it was at that time. So I won't use that term boy for those reasons. But now later in life, I hear myself being referred to as colored. Colored? What is color? That's a term of racial profile today. That was part of the status quo back a long time ago. What if we young men of all nationalities did not place an ad in our streets as colored, as some people want to say, or black, or whatever it may be? What if we put an ad of respect and challenge others to respect that? I believe that to make a difference in our neighborhoods, we must stand up and fight. And if we're going to make that fight, we must challenge a number of things. We must stand up and challenge and say, I want to be the first. I want to be the best. I look and see that here in our little small town, how so many have risen out of the depths of Centralia. And I hear somebody say the North End, but it's Centralia. Centralia produced such people as Dr. David Blackwell, who was one of the best mathematicians in the country, or U.S. Senator, Mr. Roland Burst, or one of the top computer executives in the United States, Mr. Ken Coleman, or become, well, I shouldn't say it like this, one of the first black basketball Division I coaches in the country. Better yet, let the next president, whether it be black, Hispanic, or whatever it may be a choice of people that's going to respect and live up to what it should be, the president. See, Dr. King stood up. He said he has a dream. And his dream has been recognized not only here in the United States, but in countries all over the world. What if you became one of those persons that decided to be a mentor to some other young person? What if you became the first person that stepped up to the plate when you saw, experienced, or seen, or became involved in a series of social injustice? What if you became the one that wanted to make a difference? What if you did the kind deed of the day? See, you never know how and when you would become, or do, or see, be involved, be the effective person in a person's life and make a difference. Reminds me of a picture I look at every year. It comes on TV. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. I know it's old and it comes on around Christmas, and I make sure I see it several times. In fact, I have it recorded so I can look at it throughout the year. I know my wife is saying that movie is older than you are, but it's a movie that does certain things. It's a movie that shows how one person can affect the life of another. Yes, it may be over 70 years old, but the story is a never-ending story of success that is seen and understood at the darkest hour in one man's life. It's a story of one man who gave his life into helping others that were less fortunate and in many areas didn't have the things that he had. But the good man who was led by one of my old favorite actors, a guy named Jimmy Stewart, and he played the gentleman named George Bailey in the show, was an effective person in many lives. And it took his guardian angel Clarence, who descended from the heavens, to show him just how much his life had meant to others. Well, get the movie and watch it. and with the keen eye of how Clarence helped George become involved and see just how much he had meant to others. Let's move back to that word if. If we as a nation, if we a collection of culture, educated people, if we're a people of love, if we're a people of understanding, if we are people that want to live as God intended us to live, if we indeed need to look back at Dr. King and fight to condemn the violence, the injustice, and the separation of brothers and sisters of our God, and turn around and use his fight as a continued pattern to discipline ourselves, involve ourselves in a method to condemn the violence of today. We need to condemn the use of outside damaging peripheral forces in our life, in our neighborhood, in our city, in our state, and yes, our country. We need to condemn those forces that cause death of young children, old children, young children, children that are red, yellow, black, and white, all the children in my God's sight. We need to become mentors and stewards of tomorrow's leaders. We need to remember to inflict the sting of the German Shepherd's bite, the force of the police baton, the power of the fire hose, and let those help us move into a rededication of the fight for justice and for our lives. And everywhere around us, we need to continue to fight for that justice. We need to reclaim our neighborhoods, reclaim the direction of the life of our young people, and let them see the power that they can have and can establish with economic growth, educational growth, and a system of togetherness of not one culture, but cultures of all people, cultures of red and yellow, black and white. Only then will we experience the true meaning of free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. As adults, parents, leaders, teachers, and inhabitants of God's earth, I challenge you to eradicate the word can't, eradicate those words of hate, eradicate the words of discontent, eradicate the words of lifelessness, words of indifference, and replace them with the simple word if, thus giving way to an opening of doing, opening of making possible, a reflection and results of action that were needed to succeed and improve our life. As I close, I'm reminded of two of my favorite poems. One titled, I Think I Can. I know I can. The other one is State of the Mind. So, see, if we think we can, then you know you can. If we look at our state of the mind, we can do a lot of things. The state of the mind goes like this. It's all in the state of the mind. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, guess what? It's a cinch, you won't. If you think you will lose, you have lost. For out of the world, you'll find success begins with the fellow's will. It's all in the state of the mind. For many a race is lost before every step is run, and many a coward fail before his work is begun. Think big, and your deeds will grow. Think small, and you will fall behind. Think that you can, and you will. It's all in the state of the mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. If you think you can rise high, you can rise high. You got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles do not always go to the strong or the faster man, but life's battles soon go to the man who thinks he can win and thinks he can. It's a fellow who thinks he can that becomes a success. I'll end by saying this one little thing. If. I go back to and I paraphrase. I am able to do all things through him who gives me strength. If you think you can, and if you believe that you can do all things through him, you can make a difference. And if you make a difference, our country, our city, our town, our neighborhoods become a better place to live. Thank you.